Welcome back, everyone, to the second session of the Open House LGBTQ plus Elder Housing Services Virtual Symposium. It's a pleasure to see familiar faces returning and extend a warm welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. We're thrilled to continue this series in collaboration with SAGE, the leading LGBTQ plus aging organization in the country, with the generous support of the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation. For those of you who may be new here, my name is Ephraim Getahun, and my pronouns are they and he. I serve as the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Training at the Open House LGBTQ Senior Center, broadcasting live from San Francisco. I'm honored to be your host and moderator for this four-part series throughout the month of September. As a quick recap, Open House, founded in 1998, is dedicated to uplifting the voices and experiences of LGBTQ plus older adults and fostering connections within our community. We provide housing, direct services, and community programs to support LGBTQ plus seniors in the San Francisco Bay Area as they navigate the unique challenges of aging. Our commitment extends to recognizing and embracing the rich tapestry of LGBTQ plus identities and experiences, acknowledging the intersections of race, ethnicity, class, culture, HIV status, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, spirituality, and ability. At Open House, every individual is a valued member of our community. Before we delve into today's session, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the land of the Ramaytush Ohlone people of the San Francisco Peninsula, originally known as Yelamu. We honor this land as the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. In the spirit of unity and support for Indigenous communities worldwide, let's remember our collective responsibility to address historical injustices. Reflect on your connection to the land you occupy and consider participating in local voluntary land taxes as a small step towards restitution. A few logistical details to cover. We have live English and Spanish captioning, which is available courtesy of Interprenet. And we have live American Sign Language interpretation through Interpret That. If you encounter any technical issues or have questions, please don't hesitate to use the chat feature to reach out to your team, or to our team. Your experience here matters to us. As we continue this series, we aim to provide valuable insights and discussions on LGBTQ plus aging in housing. Whether you're returning or joining us for the first time, we hope you find the session engaging and informative. And in today's discussion, we'll build upon the previous session's insights, bringing together community advocates, housing and aging experts, and service providers to explore various aspects of LGBTQ plus aging in housing. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation, and let's make this session a meaningful one for everyone. Now, without further ado, let's transition into introducing our esteemed speaker for today's session, titled By Us, For Us, Collaborative Responses to Housing Crises. This session promises to be enlightening, shedding light on the mutual aid legacies crucial for the survival and care of queer elders. Many communities across the country have embraced a mutual aid model to address housing crises, and today we have a special opportunity to learn from the experiences of Baltimore Safe Haven, who are leading the way in housing their people in Baltimore. Our session speaker, Melissa Devereaux, is an inspiring individual with a wealth of knowledge and experience in LGBTQ plus advocacy. Currently serving as the executive assistant to the executive director and chief of staff of Baltimore Safe Haven, Melissa has been a significant impact in the LGBTQ plus community for over a decade. She's a Baltimore transplant who has dedicated her life to activism, advocacy, leadership, and speaking out on LGBTQ plus issues. Notably, Melissa is a nationally certified facilitator on these issues, exemplifying her expertise and commitment. As one of the youngest members of the senior administration cabinet at Baltimore Safe Haven, she brings a fresh perspective and unyielding dedication to the cause. Melissa is also one of the co-founders of the DC Trans Ball, showcasing her involvement in creating safe spaces and fostering a sense of belonging within the LGBTQ plus community. She lives by the words of the great Dr. Marian Wright Edelman, who said, "Service is the rent we pay to be living. It is the very purpose of life and not something you do in your spare time." Today, we aim to center models of housing and care to illustrate the creative ways the needs of our community can be met by housing developers, funders, and community organizations. Melissa's dedication to service and advocacy is truly inspiring, and we are privileged to have her as our speaker for this session. Her insights and experiences will undoubtedly provide valuable perspectives on collaborative responses to housing crises within the LGBTQ plus community. Melissa will help us get a deeper understanding of the great work happening at Baltimore Safe Haven with a short presentation, followed by an interview style conversation. There will be time for questions from the audience at the end, so please utilize the chat feature at the appropriate time to ask them directly. So without further delay, let's welcome Melissa Devereaux to share her wisdom and experiences with us today. Melissa, the virtual stage is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, Good afternoon to everyone that is on the East Coast. Good morning to everyone that is on the West Coast. My name is Melissa Devereaux. I am the Executive Assistant to the ED and the Chief of Staff here at Baltimore Safe Haven. I would like to first thank Open House for allowing me to hold space with you all today and present on my organization and some of the work that we're doing to conquer homelessness within the LGBTQ community here in Baltimore, and hopefully soon nationwide. Um, so let me tell you a little bit about the mission. Well, first of all, actually, let me tell you about our executive director. Our executive director, Aya Gamons, is a force. She started this organization about 5 years ago as a little outreach van, that went around the city of Baltimore, going from various strolls, providing safe sex kits to people that were living in survival mode, that were engaging in survival sex work. From there, in 2019, we opened up our brick and mortar, September of 2019 to be exact, on Charles Street. For the longest, it had beautiful little rainbow steps. And the mission that she saw for her organization was to provide LGBTQ Baltimoreans that were living in survival mode the opportunity to thrive, not just to survive, but to thrive. And that is so important because a lot of times when we are surviving, we don't know what it means to thrive. Um, I joined this organization um, in November 2019. I've been here ever since. The work is awe inspiring. I've been in this field for 15 years now. Coming up, I did not have organizations like this to cater to my needs. Um, as a formerly homeless individual growing up, I grew up in survival mode. And I caused trauma to myself living in survival mode because I did not have organizations that were doing the work that this organization is currently doing. There was no housing. There might have been a drop-in center that you could go to after class between probably the hours of 4 and 7, but after that they were closed and there was nothing on the weekends. There was nowhere that you could go that would allow you to sleep because most of these places were only worried about the numbers. And unfortunately, a lot of larger entities still to this day are only concerned about the numbers. Aya's vision was to envision a world in which all LGBTQ people not only enjoyed healthy, self-determined, and sufficient lives liberated from stigma, violence, and oppression, but also for them to have not only equality, but equity. And I think that's a very important word that a lot of us should remember, not just equality, but equity. I would like to go ahead and transition over. So as you all see, this is a list of some of our services. We have non-medical case management services. HIV prevention services, housing services, harm reduction. We have our drop-in services and daytime and nighttime outreach. Our drop-in services, not only do we have daytime drop-in, but twice a month we do overnight drop-ins where the people that we do not reach during the day, they could be at work, they could be in school, whatever it is that they're doing that they can't come by during the day, they're able to come in at nighttime, overnight. I think it starts at 11 p.m. to about 7 a.m. And they're able to meet with a case manager, they're able to meet with workforce. Whatever needs it is they need to met is met during that overnight drop-in. Could we transition over, please? So as you will see on this slide, we have just a few of the services that our non-medical case management team provides. The first bullet point, assistance with vital records, is essentially the most important because if you don't have your vital records, essentially you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything because nowadays they ask for birth certificates, socials, IDs, and in most of the places that our clients go to, especially when we are connecting them with employment, these are just some of the basic needs that everyone has. Our housing resources, our case management team is literally an unfollowable connection to housing resources that we might not provide. So if we don't have the space to cater to individuals that are currently unhoused, our case management team connects with some of our partner organizations or private landlords and community that we have close ties to ensure housing. Uh, Permanent housing support. We are one of the only LGBTQ housing providers in the state of Maryland that goes from 18 to seniors. We also do bill assistance and rental assistance, first month and security. We are ensuring that once you get into housing, you are able to keep housing. Because all too often, a lot of us are lived experience. And we weren't focusing on where we were going to live because we were literally in survival mode. And then once we got ourselves together, it's like, okay, we need to find somewhere to go. Healthcare and everything else, we're not worried about that. Okay. Housing is the top priority. And that's what we ensure here. We operate from a housing equals healthcare model. Of course, Thrive Services, I'm assisting with applying for those food stamps, Social Security, disability. All these are important routes of income, TDAP, that some clients might be eligible for and are in need of. Of course, we do resource navigation, which includes medical assistance, mental health referrals, substance recovery referrals. We have a plethora of partnerships with different mental health providers and substance disorder recovery programs here in Baltimore and the state of Maryland abroad. Could we transition, please? So this is something that I'm particularly proud of. Our HIV STI prevention services. That program is actually astounding. It started out as us just doing HIV and STI testing and PrEP referrals and resources and community. We now have a partnership with the University of Maryland where we actually have a clinic that comes in, and not only do they do HIV STI testing, but they also do hormone therapy services for clients. Anyone is able to come in. It's every Tuesday from, I believe, 11 to 4. Within our HIV STI prevention services, of course, there is linkage to care for people that are newly diagnosed. reentry and re-engagement to care for those that were previously diagnosed but have fallen out of care. And of course, we always push for PrEP and PEP referrals. Um, we also host some of our events behind our HIV STI prevention services. I am a part of Ballroom, and that is one way that we reach community. I am the overseer. I'm the Baltimore overseer of the iconic House of Ebony in the mainstream, and I am the founding overall mother of the House of Devereaux and the Kiki scene. And I use the platform at the balls to engage my community in getting assistance with HIV testing, prevention services, if they need medical care. You know, sometimes they might not be able to come into a clinical or a nonprofit setting. Sometimes they're not comfortable. So you meet the people where they are. Um, could we go over, please? Harm reduction. So, unfortunately, Baltimore has a high overdose rate. But we at Baltimore Safe Haven are tackling that by providing safer consumption kits, naloxone, which you all see on the screen is Narcan. Um, we provide trainings. We also keep a plethora of Narcan on hand for people to pick up if they are in need. We actually ask and encourage people to come pick up a box or two. So, you know, it's great to have in your car. You never know when you might stumble across someone that is in the process of having an overdose, and that could potentially save their lives. We also have where you see Clean Works is referring to needles for IDUs, injectable drug users. Could we switch over, please? So now this is the heart of my hearts when it comes down to this services. Okay. Our housing services. I'm going to really try not to be emotional um, when I go through this because, as I was saying, me growing up in survival mode, we didn't have this. There was nothing specifically for LGBTQ individuals for housing. And most of the times, the housing that was available when I was growing up LGBTQ people were discriminated against in those housing programs. If you did get in, you were lucky. You suffered abuse, you suffered bullying from the other people. And a lot of times the people didn't care. That's if you were lucky to get in. But here at Baltimore Safe Haven, I'm proud to say that we go from low barrier shelter all the way to senior housing. Our low barrier shelter and our transitional housing, which we have two properties. Our low barrier shelter is basically our emergency shelter. Um, is for 18 to 24-year-olds that are currently in the streets. Immediately when beds open up, we rotate new people in. Our transitional housing properties, and we have two of those. Now, the first one is our Genesis project. It was formerly through the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, YHDP, which was the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project, but it is now part of, I want to say, the CLC Continuum of Care. So the first property, which is our Genesis project, is 18 to 24 years of age. And it is a beautiful, I mean, beautiful 7 apartment unit building that we have completely filled to capacity currently. I want to say we have had about 10 people graduate from this part of the program so far into permanent housing. I'm very proud to say that, and it happens continuously on a month to month basis. Once you get into this property, it's 18 to 24 months that you are able to stay in this property. But during that time, we ask that the residents are working. So that way we can build up a savings for them. So that way when they move out, they have the basic necessities of what they need. When you move out of our programs, you're going to need furniture when you get your first place, of course. You know, especially for those that this is their first place. Like, can you imagine everything being new? Can you imagine, like, for the first time, they can say that, oh my God, like, I have a place of my own. Like, the pictures that you see everybody doing where they're holding the keys, like, that's what we love to see for our clients. Because at the end of the day, to know that you're coming from the streets in survival mode to now you have your own, there's no greater joy than to experience that. Our second housing program is for 25 to 40. Wanted to make sure I got the age range correct. 25 to 40. It is um, a dual level um, home that we are able to house up to 10 people in. And this is kind of like independent living in a sense. This is not as heavily, I don't want to say guarded, heavily supervised as our other properties because we want you to experience what it's like living on your own and being able to do for yourself while also still having the aspect of, if you do need something, you have a case manager that you can go to. If you do need something, you can hit up the program manager. If you do need something, that at the end of the day, you can go and you can reach out to one of the admin staff at any time and say, hey, um, I need X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm doing. This is where I want to go. And these are my goals. Last but definitely not least is our senior housing program. I like to call it Shady Pines because I call it the retirement home. Um, we are currently able to house about 9 people in that housing unit. Um, and if you look at the top, the upper hand left corner, that's the outside of the home. Um, we have a live on housing manager that runs that house. Um, and she is so great at what she does. Definite shout outs to Renee because she literally kills it all the time. We have had some of our seniors have been there for 2 years now. We have had some that have transitioned out into other permanent housing projects and some into permanent housing when they felt like they were ready to transition on from our senior housing project. But we do have some that are still there, and they're definitely loving the program. I mean, listen, when you got a person that does the laundry, that cooks and cleans and everything like that, I would love the program too, okay? So the senior housing project, Tati is completely seniors. It's 100% seniors. Um, can we transition over, please? So our drop-in center. If you've ever been typically to a black household on Sunday after church, that's where all the family convenes for dinner. It's the family hub. It's where the matriarch presides over everything. Well, that's our drop-in center. Our drop-in center is the hub where you come in for all services, food, clothing. We host a lot of events there, financial literacy classes, clothing, um, testing. We have a computer lab. We have laundry services where we allow people to come in and do one load of laundry a week. We also host support groups, but it's a drop-in center, but it doesn't feel like a drop-in center. It's literally like a family. Like you come in, you hang out, you chill, you talk. It's like a melting pot of family. Even though you know that, when you walk out that door, you won't get the same experience outside as you do inside. You know that when you step through those doors, you're going to be treated like family. When you step through those doors, that at the end of the day, the treatment that you're going to get is going to make you feel comfortable. Um, I'm sorry. So Thrive with Pride by Age Options. So what is meant by up to level three care in the senior housing and how is that care funded? So currently we fund our senior housing project because there is a need for it. Um, and what we mean by level three care is the fact that, well, right now we are level one. We can ascertain up to level three care if we have individuals that are in need of level three services. So seniors that might be bedridden or that literally don't have mobility of the limbs and things of that nature, where they actually need to be fully taken care of. Luckily, the seniors that we have had in our projects, um, have mobility. They are able to move around. They are able to do for themselves, but we do the basic cleaning, cooking, laundry, and things like that. But they are able to support themselves. They go for walks. They go outside. They play cards. They play well, not video games, board games and card games and things like that. So we haven't reached that level where we actually need to apply level three services, but we are able to if need be. Uh, Can we transition over, please? So outreach. Outreach can be pretty fun. Outreach happens Fridays and Saturdays from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. But we also do daytime outreach. Um, this is where we go to the various strolls and various hot spots of substance use, and we provide naloxone. We provide safer conception kits. We provide safer sex kits, clean works. And in this reference, when we refer to clean works, we mean clean needles as a syringe service provider. We also provide resources to individuals or literature resources to individuals that might be in need of housing, medical services, case management, mental health, um, essentially anything they need. We have the literature resources on our outreach vans to make sure that whatever service they may need, that we can refer them to, or we can schedule them an appointment to come in so that they can meet with one of the case managers outside of the items that we give them while we are out on outreach. And there goes one of our lovely little vans right there at the bottom left hand corner. It's wrapped. We got it wrapped, and it was, the people know that purple van. They know it. Um, you can transition over. So this is one of our newer programs, workforce development, in partnership with MOED. And for those of you that don't know, it is the Mayor's Office of uh, Employment Development. Um, That department allows us to provide GD support, um, vocational educational support, mentoring, resume building, mock interviews, dress for success, um, assisting people in getting um, attire appropriate for a job or interview, um, transportation to interviews, and your job for like the first, I want to say, 2 weeks so you get paid. Um, it also ties into our financial literacy, which we have a partnership with M&T Bank for that. Um, we also have employment partnerships with like Amazon, First Time Staffing, um, Brightview, and a few other um, places. I can't remember all of them at the moment because we literally have like a list of them. But this is what like keeps our clients going. This is what keeps like the clients that we have in-house that are in-house services and out-house services employed and getting education, because one thing I believe education is so imperative in this day and age. Um, can we transition over, please? So at this time, I would actually like to welcome Ephraim back in.
I'm back. Thank you so much, Melissa, for providing, a really insightful introduction to the work that's happening there, and just getting us familiar with all of the incredible programs and work happening. Because really, your dedication, and I mean genuinely, your dedication is incredibly inspiring.
Thank you.
And I really am e- even more excited to begin to like elevate this conversation through this interview. And the questions that we have, it really gives us an opportunity to delve a little bit deeper into the collaborative responses to the housing crises that you all do.
Mhm.
We're so thankful that you're here. We're really eager to hear more about your experiences and the valuable insights. And so I'm going to just go ahead and kind of begin the questions. And naturally, I think as we talk, we might totally ditch where these questions go and just come in a different direction because there was several things that you had mentioned that had my ears perked. So I'm really curious to learn a little bit more. Yeah, so you had touched at the very beginning on kind of the origin story of the Baltimore Safe Haven. And you can provide as little or as much of your own personal story into that because as you were talking, there were a few times that you had mentioned that this didn't exist for you growing
Mm.
up. And I think what's so devastating and so beautiful about folks that end up in this work oftentimes is that they're answering a call that they were never able to receive themselves. And so, of course, you deserve the same type of care that you're offering. And I'm sure maybe there's even like a level of healing that happens internally as you're getting this care and housing out to the wider
Oof.
community. But yeah, if you can tell a little bit more about that historical origin story. I know in 2018 is when you had officially gotten the nonprofit status, but I'm sure the work far exceeds that.
So I want to say this. I have been doing this work for 15 years. This work is not for the weak. This work is not for the faint of heart. This work is not for a person that is just focused on the money.
Mm,
You will burn out doing this work. You will suffer from trauma doing this work. When you do the work in community, you are subject to being re traumatized and re triggered over and over and over and over again,
mm,
no matter how much you have healed. Because at the end of the day, you literally see yourself in the clients that you serve. They're a constant reminder to you of the obstacles that you face. But at the end of the day, as I tell people all the time, use that reminder to bolster the strength that you have found and use it to create pathways to success. I started this mm, Aya is a very dear friend of mine. I've known Aya for years. A lot of people wouldn't know if they didn't sit in a room with her and hear her story. Aya was engaging in survival sex work. She was a sex worker when she started this organization. She used money that she made on the stroll and turned it into a thriving nonprofit organization. She took what she had been through and what so many of us had been through in our generation. She took that trauma and turned it into a purpose. That purpose started out as an outreach van, then turned to brick and mortar. And from there, it became the organization that I just presented in front of you today.
Mm.
It takes fortitude and a certain strength to be able to do something like that. When for a Black trans woman that does not have higher education, the odds are stacked against you. Um, like I said, in 2018, she started as an outreach van. In 2019, with a team of about 5, she opened a brick and mortar. From 2019 to now 2023, our organization grew from one drop-in center to a drop-in center in 4 housing projects, with a potential 6 on the way. The work that is being done is monumental. And it's inspiring. Being able to see, like, even though I'm in the midst, I'm boots on the ground, I'm doing the work with her,
Yeah.
just actually seeing the work unfold, it gets no better than that.
Mm.
It gets no better than that.
Ooh, I can just feel how loaded almost everything that you're delivering us today is. I have so many questions about how you even take care of your spirit as you're doing this work, especially as you're talking about the re-traumatizing element when you're seeing yourself reflected in that community. And, as you mentioned, for a Black trans woman who was, having to rely on survival sex work, there is, by design, language and bureaucracy and policy, all of these types of things that are designed to keep people out from being able to build institutions like this. Um,
Absolutely.
and so I think it's just really recognizing the lived experience showing up in the work and having to put on the outfit of a nonprofit because the work was already being done. Yes, this gives you access to funding and maybe some weight as you're being able to, negotiate for advocacy and policy, but like the bodies that you hold and the experiences are what are informing the work. And so, yeah, I don't have a follow-up question with that. It's just really recognizing the magnitude. And also I just want to comment on your what you had said, just being able to observe the work. It's really kind of like at the magnitude of like creation mythology. Like there is this idea that is being, that is had by these individuals who have this lived experience, and you're actually being able to execute this work and transform the real world with that experience. So again, no follow-up question, just recognizing the magnitude of the work that's being done. Um, okay, I would love for us to talk a little bit about your senior specific programming. I know you had mentioned the housing, and I would love us, because I noticed some questions in the audience about the specific services or programs that Baltimore Safe Haven has that currently are targeted towards older adults within the LGBTQ plus community. So if you can expand on that, whether that's folks that are engaging with the existing programs. What's really beautiful is the spectrum of programs are touching folks across their entire aging process. So it's really beautiful that you get to see people come in at really any avenue and potentially have an opportunity to see their whole aging process.
Absolutely. So for us, here's the thing. And also let me elaborate on something really quickly. For us, our senior age starts at a lower level than traditional seniors age. Um, and the reason of this is because, Lord, mm, I'm not going to cry.
Mhm.
In our community, the average life expectancy for a transgender woman is not to pass 25 years of age. I want to sit and leave that there for a second. In our community, the average life expectancy of a trans woman is not passing 25 years of age. So when you have trans women and trans men and non binary individuals that have been out since the ages of 15, 16, living in survival mode, and they are looking for a place to rest, finally, that's what we provide for them.
Mhm.
Our senior project is the first of its kind. It is solely funded by us because we knew that there was a need, an imperative need. Unfortunately, when it comes down to housing, funders only fund the youth.
Mhm.
Once you hit 24 and you age out of that 18 to 24 age bracket, excuse me, there is no funding. There is no housing program unless you're going through a program like HOPWA, or unless you're going through a program, excuse me, that is for victims of either sexual assault or domestic violence. But that should not be the only avenue for a person to have that needs housing.
Yeah.
And that is why we engage our seniors so much. Like we don't just only have the senior housing project, like we do senior days. Like last month, Renee had an event where we took them to, oh Lord, what is the name of that beach? I can't remember the name of the beach offhand, but they had a beach day. Um, the month before that, they did duck pin bowling. They have their support groups. A lot of these things that they do are funded directly from the organization because there's a need. There is not only a need for housing, but there's a need for camaraderie. There is a need for
Mhm.
essentially having a group of people that you can talk to when times get rough.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, no problem.
That last piece around isolation is really really key. Isolation is incredibly pervasive in our aging population. In what ways, as Baltimore Safe Haven continues to grow, and as you guys continue to evolve your programs, what ways do you think your existing model of support might be adapted to better serve queer older adults? Especially because, and I know that this is experienced across the world, really, that aging looks very different now
Mhm.
than it did before the pandemic. There are many different reasons for that, whether it's like chronic conditions and illness directly related to COVID or otherwise has been exacerbated. People are more isolated, so they're not engaging in their healthcare more often. So, are there ways that Baltimore Safe Haven is beginning to look towards the future as it continues to grow, which it's already grown exponentially in the last 5 years? It's kind of maybe you should slow down. I don't know, but I know
You
that.
can't slow
Yeah,
down.
I know that's right. I know. So yeah, if you want to answer towards the ways that you are continuing to think about adapting.
Expanding more housing. Um, Building out more senior programming. Um, I would love to see potentially a senior project that is not just housing, but
Mm,
actual wraparound care specifically for the elders. Um, I think that is necessary to show them that you all are not forgotten. Because what I think happens is, and I hate to say it like this, you have funders that see when the clients and things are younger and they're still full of life. It's like a shiny new toy, right? But then the moment that the shine starts to wear off and they get tired of playing with us, because essentially that's what a lot of these funders do. They play with
mm,
us, they play with the games, they get their data, and then they put us up on the shelf. A lot of times our seniors have been shelved. And I want to bring those seniors back down off the shelf and put them at the forefront. Because at the end of the day, it is on a lot of these elders' shoulders that we stand on. And I want to show them, and we're going to show them that they are still important. They still matter. We still care. Because oftentimes, society does not show that they still care about the elders. It's okay, your time is up. We're going to push you off to the side. So
mm,
that is what we are in the process of doing. We are in the process of expanding to bring seniors back into not only view, but the forefront as well.
mm. Thank you. Yeah, I think speaking to the fact that many, whether it's funders or like national organizations, whatever it is, there is this deep desire for data and information, and that information is always really important. Data can translate to literal dollars, but I think we lose the humanity behind the statistics. There are individuals whose lives need to be transformed, specifically that need to be transformed because of the circumstances that we have designed against them. So I think a lot of the call to action there, whether it's explicit or not, whether people realize it or not, that it's really beautiful that you're centering the experiences of seniorhood and want to continue doing that as you grow as an organization.
Absolutely.
And you've already kind of spoken to what I was going to ask next, which are a lot of the challenges and obstacles that you anticipate in extending those services. Because, ideally, you would be able to just do this work, right? But there's bureaucracy, there are rules and regulations that accompany the way funding arrives that really oftentimes limit your ability. So, are there other partnerships? Are there folks on this call that you want to speak to when it comes to, getting you specific resources, ways to support your work? Are there things that this audience specifically, not only individuals that may be seniors, but other folks that are in the development and funding world that can do, that can actually support your work directly?
Absolutely. One thing, oh, that was a little too exciting for me for a second. One thing that I'm going to say is, y'all might not like this. And please, I'm not trying to offend nobody.
You can offend me.
No, no, not you. Not you. I'm just saying some of like developers and funders, put your money in organizations that are actually doing the work, not organizations that have been open longer, not organizations that have had a reputation from about 20 years ago, not organizations that don't work with one trans person and now they think that they're culturally competent, because that's not how it works. A lot of time funding goes to organizations that really do not know what it means to do the work when it comes to our community. And that is a problem. It is tokenization at its best. And I don't mean no harm.
That was harmful. I really don't know what to say. um, Yes, I agree. I think, frankly, a lot of us, ourselves included, like I'm in San Francisco. Sage is in New York City. We are coastal cities, incredibly resourced, have a lot of access and privilege, and so whether that's us kind of leveraging the relationships that we have, and bringing them into the room, and then kind of stepping back because the work is already being done,
Mhm.
or people with literal dollars being able to support this work. There are ways that we can show up and support the work directly. We had talked a little bit more about the programs that you have, and it's very clear the crucial work that's happening in Baltimore. So, are there specific services or resources that maybe Baltimore Safe Haven isn't doing, but knows it needs to get done? Because obviously everything is happening in sequence. You can't do everything. You can't serve everyone. But are there specific services or resources that you believe are most crucial for our queer elders right now, and how do you prioritize them as you're getting the work done?
Hmm. So you really just made me think on this one.
Mm,
um, so I would say this. To an extent, the way that we operate is, if there is something that you need that we are not providing, we will find a way to provide it. Whether it means bringing that programming in-house or referring out to one of our partners that can provide you with those services. Um, the greatest need here in Baltimore for queer and trans elders is the need for housing, some employment, but the greatest need and how we're prioritizing it is trying to open up more housing projects. We are only so big, we only have the capacity to be able to do so much at any given time, especially after the governor declared Maryland as a sanctuary state. Um, it literally opened up like the floodgates. Um, I want to say the amount of calls and messages um, from individuals, seniors, families seeking refuge from other states that are currently waging systemic genocide on the trans community has been completely overwhelming.
Mhm,
Um, I want to say it has increased about 10 to 20 fold within the last 2 to 3 months. Um, Housing is our top priority. Any other service, we can provide that. Case management can connect you in house or out house referral to whatever services they might need or whatever, whether it be clothing, food. We even find employment for some of our seniors that are living currently in our housing project.
mhm. Thank you, Melissa. I'm sorry, I just like as you were thinking, just kind of diving more and more into this rabbit hole that I'm entering into. And so, you know, one of the really important programs that stood out to me as you were speaking is the
Mhm.
incarcerated siblings program and how life
Mhm.
sustaining that work is. Can you tell us very, you don't have to go deeply into this, just you can just touch on how incarceration has affected this community, but more importantly, that bail assistance program. Can you talk about how unique that program is, and why it's so important, and what motivated y'all to take this approach, and how it's maybe transformed some of the members of the community that have been able to take advantage of it?
95% of our staff is lived experience. I want to say that again, 95% of our staff, from the newest to oldest staff, from the executive director down to the maintenance man,
Mhm,
95% of our staff is a lived experience. We are the community that we serve. So when it comes down to why the incarcerated siblings program was so important, it was so important because at the end of the day, when you come from that background and you don't have a support system, when you know that the difference between being behind bars and central booking or having a
mhm,
community family that is there to bail you out, it completely changes your perspective of things. It it makes you feel as though you're seen. It makes you feel as though you are loved. We don't just do bail assistance. For our siblings that are currently incarcerated, we accepting phone calls. We're writing letters. We're sending commissary. We're making sure that books are good.
mhm.
Because at the end of the day, we know how it is. We know how it is. There are a few of us that have, I'm not going, I ain't gonna tell nobody a story, but there are a few of us that have had to lean on other people to get us through some of the trials and tribulations that we went through. But without those trials and tribulations, we wouldn't have the testimonies that we have today.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Melissa. I think, what many people miss outside of just the sheer isolation that comes from sitting in a cell. I think there was a statistic that I had read that the federal government had done an assessment that about 20% of our prisons, specifically people that are being deemed as prisoners in those prisons, are just there for debt related to either a ticket, a citation, some type of financial kind of imprisonment, or like debt prison essentially is what's being created. And so these like relatively like relatively big and small acts that you are doing are such beautiful acts of love for a community that's completely neglected. But when you're in a prison cell as a trans individual specifically, I mean, there's just so many layers based on the intersection of those people's identities. So it's just such a beautiful act of love to be able to show up and be able to take those phone calls, be able to make sure those books are good so people can get maybe a little bit of a nicer thing from commissary, whatever that is. It just is a really beautiful act of love that y'all are doing.
Absolutely. And listen, don't tell us that they ain't in there treating you right, because baby, we'll be out there with our signs and our bullhorns and call them out.
Yes,
We
good,
we we
good.
we have done this a couple of times.
Mm,
We ain't afraid to get down and dirty. We are the definition of boots on the ground.
yeah. Well, when any system recognizes that there are people accounting for that person, right? Like if you are making noise and there are people out on the streets making noise about the safety of an individual or someone not being cared for correctly, it makes it very difficult for them to ignore because there's people on the outside looking out for these individuals. So that boots on the ground element is so important because I think we can theorize and do focus groups and assessments and needs assessments trying to understand what it is, and you are just pulling your sleeves up and getting the work done while we're assessing this need. So that's really incredible. You spoke a little bit about the mobile outreach program that's happening at Baltimore Safe Haven. Can you share, some of the impact this program has had and why the philosophy of meeting people where they are at is so powerful, especially when we're talking about the platform that you have in ballroom, especially as you're out at these balls and being able to engage with community where they are at. Maybe some of our audience isn't familiar with ballroom. I'm not sure why, but at this point, but some folks may not be familiar with ballroom if you want to touch on that. But that access of going to community is a really powerful tool that you have. Oop, are we there? Maybe frozen in time? Oop, Melissa may be frozen. And so for a moment, we're going to go ahead and give Melissa a chance to play with the internet connection and make sure that she's good. I see lots of questions in the chats from folks that are engaged in this conversation. I'm so grateful for that. We will be able to get to the Q&A at the very end. While we're waiting for Melissa to return, if you want to take advantage of this moment and go ahead and type out whatever questions you might have into that chat. And we are in real time compiling a list of folks that are interested in having their questions answered by Melissa. We will get to that Q&A portion in about 10 minutes. In the meantime, I think I can talk a little bit more. Oh, here we are. There she is.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
The technical difficulties.
That's okay. The ancestors protected. So I think we had just gotten to the question around the philosophy of meeting people where they are at. And I think what was so powerful that you were talking about earlier was going to community, of course, through the way the outreach program is designed, but even in your personal life, using your platform in ballroom culture. And so just speaking a little bit to why that philosophy of meeting people where they are at is so important.
In order to see people in their truest form, in order to see people when they're the most comfortable, you have to meet them in their element. At the end of the day, a person will not be comfortable in a space that they're not familiar with. A person might not feel comfortable coming into a drop-in center where you have 6 people waiting for services, 3 people in the back talking to a case manager. Sometimes it's too much. But when you meet people where they are, you're able to meet with them. You're able to speak their language. You're able to not only comfort them in knowing that you are willing to meet them where they are, but also ensure that you're building up a relationship that shows them that I am willing to go the distance for you.
Oop, I'm just realizing I was muted. I was saying so many beautiful things in response to your answer. I was just saying how beautiful it is to be able to witness individuals in community as they are because their environment matches what they are comfortable with. So going out into community is so powerful. Um, your organization has been incredibly successful in politically advocating for the rights of trans people in Baltimore and Maryland. What advice would you give an organization or individual from another city or within Baltimore about advocating for trans rights with governing officials?
Be direct, be
Mm.
intentional, and give them hell.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
I
at
mean,
the end of the day, no one is going to advocate for you better than you.
mm,
No one is going to advocate for your community better than you.
mm. It's so true. It is so true. Our natural investment in our struggle and in our suffering. And this is a blueprint that any one of our elders understands intimately. I mean, it is literally their shoulders that we are standing on. So, yes, please take on that call as Melissa just outlined for us. Melissa, I have a couple more questions for you before we transition
Okay.
to our Q&A from the audience. Can you share a little bit more about the impact of providing both housing and services to the community members in need of housing? How does providing comprehensive services and programming in addition to your housing impact the residents?
I have literally seen some of our residents do a complete 360. Um, Knowing or having the knowledge that I have housing, but I'm also being heard.
Mm,
My needs are actually being met. It does something for them. Hell, if I would have had it back in the day, it would have did something for me. Because knowing that I'm going from being homeless to having somewhere to stay, to be comfortable, to be warm, to have food, to be safe. And then not only are they focused on me having a place to rest my head, but also them focusing on the fact that I need healthcare or that I need education or that I need counseling because my mental health is all messed up.
mm,
Like, do you know how rare that is?
mm,
A lot of orgs is given one or the other.
mm,
Either we're going to provide you with these services here or we're going to provide you with housing. But to be able to give you both, and then not just give you both and then back away, but to give you both and hold your hand the entire way through the process.
right.
Even when you exit our program, you are still a client of our organization because once you exit, now you're in aftercare.
Right. Beautifully said. Thank you, Melissa. Before we transition to our Q&A, I would love for you to give folks one more time. I know you already gave the call to action to whether it's funders or housing developers or other organizations, but what are direct ways that they can communicate to you, whether that's a link or an email? How can folks get in contact that have been equally as moved as I have been multiple times in this conversation, that are interested in supporting your work, either getting out of the way so that you can do that work, or centering or uplifting in whatever way feels appropriate.
Well, listen, I just saw it. Thank you. There's a link right there if you are interested in donating. If you are interested in donating to the work that we do, the life-saving and life-sustaining work that we do here at Baltimore Safe Haven, please feel free to donate. If you would like to volunteer, please stop in at our drop-in center or email us. Our drop-in center is located at 2117 North Charles Street, Baltimore, Maryland 21218, or you can email me at melissa@baltimoresafehaven.org, and we will find a place for you. Whether it be your time, your skill set, your expertise, if you know how to teach a vocational skill, please
Mm,
come see us. Because no matter what way you support, it's the support that matters.
right. Beautiful. So you hear it. Here's an email, and please make sure to hit that donate button if you are willing, and especially if you are able. Thank you, Melissa, for your thoughtful answers and the wealth. I mean, when I say wealth, the wealth of insight you've shared with us during our discussion. Your experiences, your expertise is absolutely invaluable. So now, audience, it's your turn. It's time to open the floor to our participants for a Q&A session with the Melissa Devereaux. We encourage you to take advantage of the chat feature, ask us the questions, the burning questions of your spirit. Melissa is here to provide further insights, elaborate maybe on some key points, and address any queries you might have about collaborative responses to housing crises. So please don't hesitate. You can use the chat feature, typing your questions right in there, and we'll get to them in the order that they've been asked, and we'll try to cover as many as possible with our remaining time. So let's make this Q&A session an interactive and informative one. So again, Melissa, we really appreciate your time. And I actually have already begun listing out, I've been, keeping tabs on the chat here, and I already have a bunch of questions. We're going to easily be able to fill our time here.
Okay.
One person had asked, and I apologize if I can't pronounce this right, but it's Scrycer maybe, or Scrycer, asks, thank you for your necessary work. How did your organization get your first brick and mortar property? Are you looking to expand? What kind of properties would best help your program?
Okay, so Scrycer, I hope I'm not chopping and screwing and mispronouncing it. As I mentioned before, our executive director was still engaging in survival sex work when she started this organization. And every night when she went out, the money that she made, she saved. And with that money, she opened up this organization. So that is how the first brick and mortar was ascertained. And as far as what kind of properties, it really all depends on what it's being used for. Like our drop-in center currently is a center where we have showers and laundry. Like, so if we decide we want to open up another drop-in center, like we want something with a kitchen and a full bathroom with a shower, probably laundry capabilities, because we want people to be able to come in and have access to these services. Because sometimes you might have been out on the streets 3 or 4 or 5 nights and not have access to a shower anywhere else. We want you to be able to come in and take a shower here. We want you to be able to grab some clothes off that clothing rack if you don't have clothes to change into, because we have it here for you.
Mm.
And then our housing location, Residential, um, whether it be a townhouse, a row house, an apartment building, or by shop time. If it's an apartment building, if you want to give an apartment building to Baltimore Safe Haven, we will fill it,
Mm,
okay? Because there is a need.
I know y'all will. Beautiful. Someone named, I believe, Sherry, or maybe Cheryl, asks, can you talk about your funding sources? We are trying to start these services in our community.
um, so a lot of our housing is through um like the mayor's office of homeless services, ARPA, um, social determinants of health. Um, these are funders that you would want to go through to apply for grants for housing in your respective location. I'm not sure exactly where you're located, so I can't like exactly pinpoint the exact like funding sources. But those are some of ours here in Baltimore, aside from the own funding that the organization puts in to our housing project.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thrive with Pride by Age Options asks, what is meant by up to level 3 care in the senior housing? How is that care funded? And I know you touched a little bit about the care up to level 3, but if you want to just redefine what level 3 care means, and then how is that care funded?
So our our senior housing project is completely funded by us currently.
Mhm.
Um, but level 3 care in a senior housing program is essentially where everything is done by the staff. Like your bathing, cooking, cleaning, um, moving you back and forth. Level 3 care is essentially when a person does not have the mobility to be able to do things on their own. So while we do not have residents that currently um, need level 3 care, we are able to provide it if necessary.
Amazing. So supporting most of the ADLs that any person would need, which is all about that,
Yeah,
continuum of making sure, hopefully, having people be able to age in place. That's really powerful.
absolutely.
For Shady Pines, as you lovingly dubbed it, are there income rent restrictions? Is that community fully funded by Baltimore Safe Haven, or are there local and state and federal subsidies that are involved? And how do you identify or qualify eligible residents? There's a lot of questions there, so I'm happy to reiterate it.
So it is completely funded by Baltimore Safe Haven. Um, we do not receive any local, state, or federal subsidies for Shady Pines. Um, there are not income or rent restrictions. Um, and how do we identify or
Identify and
qualify
qualify. Mhm.
eligible residents? Um, so if you are a senior and you are in need of housing and we have availability, then you qualify.
Wow. Y'all are really doing the work. Whew. Um, from Alex, do the senior programs or the senior day events involve just the residents in the senior housing, or also other residents within the community and just community members wide?
We involve everyone. Um, majority of the events that we do, we post up on like our Facebook pages, our social media platforms, and things like that, inviting everyone. unless like it's specifically just for in-house. Um, but the majority of our events are community-wide based.
Amazing. Yeah, that really gives people an opportunity to connect and then even see y'all in action. So when if and when they are ever in need, they know that there's something out there that
Absolutely.
that can support them. I have a few more questions from the audience. Someone had a really insightful question about, and you actually did touch on this, but of course, please, if you don't mind reiterating, why
Mhm.
is the age for seniors so much lower for your community?
Once again, the average life expectancy of a trans individual is not surpassing 25 years of age. And not only that, but typically in our community, a lot of us have been out for so long
Mm,
because we have had to be in survival mode. You might have a person that was 14 years old that jumped off the porch and been on the streets ever since.
mhm,
So by the time they reach 30, like it's factoring in the trauma,
mhm,
factoring in the PTSD, factoring in the physical toll that engaging in some of the things that you do in survival mode, it takes a toll on people.
mhm. Thank you. You just got to sit with that for a second. Um, Tati in the audience asks, what is the age requirement for the senior housing?
There really isn't an age requirement. Um, 35 and up
Beautiful.
is what the senior house caters to. But keep in mind, there is no gap in housing services from the 18 to senior
Mm,
because whether they are in the transitional or low barrier for 18 to 24 or the transitional for 25 and up, there's no way that we will let them drop through the cracks.
mm. Wow. Yeah, that's a huge barrier that most organizations cannot confront is that gap. That's really, really incredible. I have a couple more questions from Scricer. And again, please, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. There's a curious question about how can non-ballroom affiliated providers of care best partner with the ballroom community or particular houses? Who should we contact? I've tried a few times, but I haven't reached the right people.
Okay, so Scricer, you can reach out to me. Again, my email is melissa@baltimoresafehaven.org. Um, I am not sure where you are, um, but I could possibly connect you with some ballroom leaders, depending upon the area that you're in, to excuse me, facilitate the dialogue um, and potentially bridge and build that partnership.
Amazing. It's also good for non-ballroom community to think about um, the radical nature of ballroom, and so participating in events like it's a sponsorship event, or
Mhm.
there's going to have to be a cultural fluency that folks think about, and so your support
Absolutely.
may look invisible, and it should. Like I think slapping, an organization's name or like creating this incredible marketing element around ballroom is going to be very difficult. You're not going to be able to do that in most settings. And so thinking about the way your support looks and being okay with the fact that it may not be visible, even though it's visible in the individuals that you are affecting. That may also be another thing to think about. Okay, I think that we're going to go ahead and close for Q&A. We had tons of folks that had lots of questions. It's just very clear, Melissa, that your work has touched a lot of people. I was genuinely having to hold tears back. I got some messages from other staff here at Open House that was saying the same things. It's just your investment, your whole self is very clearly in this work. And I'm just genuinely, personally very grateful that you are here doing this work. And we are going to figure out a way to continue to support what you are doing, because what Baltimore Safe Haven is doing is ahead of its time and way too late too. And it's not Baltimore Safe Haven's fault. This is long overdue, so again, thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. All right, friends, as we bring this enlightening session of the Open House LGBTQ plus Elder Services Housing Symposium to a close, I want to extend again my deepest gratitude to our remarkable speaker, Melissa Devereaux. Melissa, your expertise, your experiences, your wisdom have left an indelible mark on our symposium, and we are profoundly honored to have had you as our second speaker in this 4-week journey. I'd also like to express heartfelt appreciation to the teams at InterpreNet, who provided invaluable captioning services, and Interpret That, who ensured that our event was accessible through American Sign Language interpretation. Your unwavering dedication to accessibility has made it possible for a broader audience to engage in these crucial discussions. Furthermore, a special thank you goes out to our esteemed partner organization, SAGE, for their consistent support and collaboration throughout the symposium. Together, we are affecting meaningful change in the lives of LGBTQ plus elders. Of course, we must acknowledge the generous contribution of the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation, whose support made this symposium possible. Their commitment to initiatives benefiting our community is immeasurable, and we are deeply appreciative of their support. And lastly, thank you to Tuttle Co. for their production support and facilitation throughout this 4-week series. We could not be here without them. Remember, your registration for this symposium grants you access to the following 2 sessions taking place at the remaining Tuesdays in September at 11 a.m. PST, 2 p.m. EST. We have an outstanding lineup of speakers and topics that promise to deepen our understanding of the housing challenges and opportunities faced by LGBTQ plus elders. So please mark your calendars, share the news, and join us next week for another engaging session. With the support of partners like SAGE and organizations like InterpreNet and Interpret That, we can continue to construct a more inclusive and affirming future for LGBTQ plus elders. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you next week.